So Ed Hussein is here, and I'm perhaps slightly less extreme in his views. Just as those who don't believe in Islamism have their own grades, those who are Islamists have their own degrees. And so I don't have a problem, as I said, sitting with anyone, including those who I sat with in prison. And also I don't have a problem cooperating on the good, where there is some good to be done. And I think with regards to the particular question in Turkey, I encourage the project that Erdogan is currently involved in Turkey. I think that's it's a good project, and I think that's perhaps the way forward. Some form of Muslim democrat sort of thinking needs to develop, and what's happening in Turkey, it's a good sign for the future, I think.
Great. There's a question right at the back, in the corner. Yes.
Hi, my name's Abdurrahman Jafar. Thank you for your speech. I don't think there was anything uncontroversial about what you said. And I think most Muslims around the world entirely agree with everything you said. The problem is, most of the Muslims who'd agree with what you say would also be termed as Islamists. The people in Turkey who are for the Rafa party or the now reformist Islamic party. In Malaysia, you have Muslims who are also seeking democratic pluralism under the banner of Islam, with totally compatible conclusions such as yours with democracy and human rights. In Kuwait, everywhere around the world, we have an explosion of Muslims who are seeking to manifest democratic liberal principles within their own religion. And when you say that all Islamists are wrong and it's an evil ideology or whatever, that's what Murray would interpret what you were saying, you're condemning the whole of this Muslim project and the whole of the Muslim world. Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these projects which are really about self-determination and independence and which are condemned by the neoconservative movement because there are movements for self-determination and independence. You are actually playing into that neoconservative narrative by every argument you've given is all about being against that stupid organisation called Hezbollah Tahrir, but you're clothing it by saying that this is all Islamist. I don't know what an Islamist is, and nobody else does. It's so diverse. There are so many.
Do you want to respond to that?
So please, if you can.
I do encourage comments such as that because I do like to be grilled in that way, so we can really get to the nitty-gritty of the discussion. So thank you for that. Islamism is the belief that sovereignty belongs to God. In a political sense, sovereignty belongs to God. That there's such a thing as an Islamic state. I don't believe there's such a thing as an Islamic state, as I don't believe there's such a thing as an Islamic car. So Islamism is the belief that there's such a thing as an Islamic state, and that sovereignty belongs to God, and that legislation is for God. And therefore it judges ideologically all the states that exist today, not on political paradigms, not with political views, such as if I'm a liberal, then I'd look to how liberal this society is. If I'm a Nazi, I'd look to how Nazi this society is. But no, it judges every single state with Islamist paradigms, such as to what extent is God's law implemented in this society? To what extent does sovereignty belong to God? To what extent is the legislation consistent with the Sharia law? That's what Islamism is. That's the psyche of Islamism. So you mentioned Hamas. Hamas are, excuse me, I'll let you finish. Can you let me finish? Thank you. Thanks. Yes, sir. So Hamas, you mentioned, Hamas are an Islamist party. Yes, they resist occupation, but at the same time, their solution to the occupation is to transform the political environment within Palestine into an Islamist environment, to implement God's law on a state level, to bring about what they define as an Islamic state, and they claim sovereignty is for God. I'm saying those notions are alien to Islam. They are alien to Islam. To talk of Islamic states and non-Islamic states, to talk of sovereignty in a political sense belonging to God, these are alien notions, and they are modern notions, and we have to recognize that. Once we recognize it, the debate can move forward.
Okay, there's a question just there in the middle with glasses. Could you stand up? Yep.
My name's Shahid Longyear. But my only comment is that when you mention that Islamism is a detriment to Muslim or Islam, doesn't it go beyond Islamism to what we term or constitute, again, quote unquote, mainstream Islam? Because isn't the problem not just with Islamism, but what constitutes mainstream Islam or what is in Muslim terms, that all we have as mainstream notions or interpretation of Islam is very textualized, very literalist Islam, which seems to be the centerfold of Islam, above and beyond Islamism. in the sense that you just look at the people who run their Islamic societies, you look at the rise, for example, especially amongst second and third generation Desi Muslims of the beard and the hijab. It goes above and beyond, I think, what you talk about Islamism to the very core of what is being Islam or a Muslim.
Thank you for that. I want to be careful to distinguish between two different discussions. One is my views on Islamism, and the other is, as a liberal, my views on allowing somebody to be an adherent Muslim, whether they are adherent in a strict sense or whether they follow the spirit of the law or the texts very directly and very closely. That's a separate discussion, and I believe mixing them is dangerous because I have a friend here sitting at the front who has a beard, but he's far from being an Islamist. Sorry, Rashad. Now, people with beards, for example, or people who pray 5 times a day or wear headscarves aren't necessarily Islamists. So that's the danger. I'm not saying you're doing that, but that's the danger that I'm concerned about when mixing the two discussions together. So Abdul Haq, who asked the question at the beginning, is far from being an Islamist. So as to your actual question about literalism, I don't agree with literalism. I believe the Usuli approach, the approach which is based from principles of interpretation found within juristic thinking.
But can I just interject?
Can I just finish?
Textualized point.
Yeah.
You're still textualizing Islam.
No, what I'm saying is I don't have a problem with people who do so, though I don't. Yeah, I'm being very clear. Those who choose to do so, it's their freedom of religion to do so. I don't say that that's necessarily something I want to speak out against. But what I say, if my view is asked, then I don't think that in the realm of politics that we should be defining our political policies by using scripture, because it's unhelpful. However, what I do think is that in my personal worship, I will refer to scripture to know how to pray. That's the right of me as a Muslim to do so. But I separate that and the political discussion.
But your point where you say you go down to jurisprudence to determine what you're doing, again, only constructing Islam as this fiqh construct, again, which is part of the problem.
Yes, to determine how to pray, yes. But to determine my politics, no. Because I don't think God revealed Islam to tell me how to run a state.